Back to my channel. Today we'll be creating a simple game using CoreML and Swift. And what this game is about is trying to see how well we can use CoreML to identify objects. So the game that we're making today is simple to create and play. After the user taps the start button, the name of a random object will appear at the top of the screen. It is the player's job to find that object. Once that player does, they will point the phone at it. Using the machine learning algorithm, the phone will recognize the object and then ask for another one. Every object found adds a score point, right? This game is directly from the website AppCoda. So if you want, you can go over there and find their tutorial and follow along there. So let's go ahead and create a new SCode project. So we go new project. For this, we'll be creating a iOS app. And let's call this CoreML game. For account, let's leave it blank for now. Be using the storyboard. And it will be Swift. You could or could not use core data. I will choose not to. For bundle identifier, mine will be my moniker. Could leave it at that. My desk. It's always good to create a Git repository just so that you can always track your changes over time. I just had my name. That should be fine. All right, so let's make a few little changes. In deployment info, let's set that to iOS 11. Okay. And I think that is it. All right. Now let's go over to storyboard and start setting up our application. The first thing we will want is to add, it'll be to add a new view. So let's go here, save view. I'll use this one. And if, like me, you're using the iPhone 11 or 10 and up, where you have a notch, you gotta ensure that you're setting the constraints perfectly. All right, so let's add automatically add the layout. This one. And what I will do also is just to copy this view to the bottom. Okay, and also set the constraints as well. So the default background, I want to set that to a gray color. So let's use this one. This top view, right in the middle, we will add a label. So like somewhere right there in the center. Let's actually fill the entire screen maybe. Again, if we need to change this, we can always change it. And set a text. Actually, let's make a little space. Okay. Let's add another label in here. So this label on the left will be the label that contains your score. And let's center that as well. Okay. And this label will be the object description. Okay. In the bottom view, we'll add two labels also, as well as two UI buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have one label here, about that size. The first label we will have score. All right, let's copy that. And paste that right onto the bottom. And the second label will be iScore. All right. We can just make that a little longer. As I mentioned, we'll also need two UI buttons. So let's go one button here, copy that, and another button right under. The bottom button, we'll name it skip, and its top button will say, for example, start. Okay, so we have our two views added. So now let's go over to our view controller, and we will add our methods. So for import, there's a few stuff that we'll need to import, a few modules. So let's do import. The first one will be mobile core services. We'll also import vision. Because it's machine learning, we'll import CoreML. And we'll also import AVKit. All right. Now that we've imported our necessary frameworks, next we'll add our outlets. These outlets are what we'll use to connect our UI to our code. I will write these by and then connect them, but you can also drag from the UI storyboard into here, and it will also create that. But I will code by hand. All right. Okay, now IP outlet bar. Our first one, let's do a score label, and that's a UI label. Second, IP outlet as well. Var, we have an iScore label. So a UI label. Let's also do Let's have a time label. Again, URL label. So for our object label, it's on top. It's also a URL label. We also have a button. We have the start button. And then the UI button. We also have our skip button as well. Again, UI button. And we have our two views. So let's do that as well. So we have our top view, UI view, and the last one is our bottom view. UI view. All right, so these are our IB outlets. Now we need to create some global variables. So let's add these global variables that we'll be using. The first one we'll do is our camera layer. So we will be using our camera, and for that we'll use CA layer. All right. Another one is let's do our timer. So game timer, and we have a timer. Another variable, remaining time. So remaining time, we'll try to time you, and for that you will have 60 seconds. We'll also do current score, and we set that equals to 0, and also our iScore we'll set equals to 0. So just a few explanation for the camera layer. This camera layer will add the view onto it later. It will take up the entire background of the screen. We'll also initialize the game timer later. We are making it global so we can invalidate it from any other function. So let's move along. In view.load, we will be calling our view setup from here. So let's say view setup, and then let's create that function view setup. All right. Now let's set up our view. So let's do our background color. Select background color equals, we want to set that, let's say UI color dot init and we'll say red, green, blue, and alpha. Red 255 over 255. Blue would be the same. Green the same as well. And for alpha, we set alpha 0.8. Right. Now let's do our top view dot background color is equals to background color. Bottom view background color is also equals to background color. And let's set a text for our score label. So score label dot text is equals to in a string, let's see, 0. All right. So what this is doing is adding some transparency to the top and bottom views so we can see the live camera feed behind them. We are also setting the score label text to 0. All right. So now because we will be using a camera, there are a few little things we need to do. So let's go over to info.plist and we will add our camera property. So it'll be privacy, camera usage description, and you'll just for value you would put a little description. So I would say CoreML game wants to use your camera for detecting objects. Okay. And with that, we set our camera. Let's go back to our view controller. And we will call our function camera setup. This will be in view.load, and also we will set up our function as well. So camera setup. So now let's set up our camera. So we'll say let capture session equals AV capture session. Capture session dot session preset is equals to AV capture session dot preset dot photo. Yep. Let's set our back camera as well. So let back camera equals AV capture session. Actually, it will be AV capture device because we're trying to use the device. And default will be let's try the other one. It's default. Okay, and it will be dot for this, let's use the built-in wide-angle camera. Here we can select which camera we'll use. For the iPhone 11 Pro, I will be using the built-in wide-angle camera. For, I would say it will be that video, and position would be the back. And let's put a closure. Now we say let input equals, and we use a try statement. Try AV capture device input. Capture device input, and device would be back camera. lastly, we would say capture session dot add input, and that input will be input. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. So first we create the AV capture session and we set that constant. Next we set the preset for the caption, which pretty much sets the quality for the output. We're setting it to photo for it to be high resolution. Next we create an AV capture device, which is the back camera. For this game, we have no reason to use the front camera, so we specifically set it for back camera. We then specify that we're using the back camera for referencing the back camera AV capture device, after which we are adding the back camera device as the input for the capture session. All right, so let's add a little bit more code. Let's do our camera layer. So camera layer equals AV capture video preview layer, and we'll set that to session, and our session will be capture session. Next, let's do our view dot layer dot add sublayer, and our sublayer will be the camera layer. Okay. Again, camera layer dot frame is equal to view dot bounds. View dot bring subview to front, and it'll be top view, and view dot bring subview to front again, it'll be bottom view. All right. Next, let's set our video output. That would be AV capture video data output, like so. And video output dot set sample buffer delegate, sample buffer delegate, we say self, and for Q it'll be dispatch and let's do label, and we set the label buffer delegate, like so. And let's try to switch this to dispatch queue. Alright, and that should take care of the error. Then the error says type of expression is ambiguous without more context.